All right, and that wraps up the work for the National Assembly as far as the budget debate is concerned. You heard even earlier on a number of political parties there debating their positions on the framework. But the end of the day, you now see no abstentions, 194 for and 182 against, which means
it has passed. Yeah? And we were looking, by the way, just in terms of political reaction. Remember, the DA had put itself, if you will, front and center of the opposition to the increase, or a budget that includes an increase in value-added tax, 0.5 percentage points this year and a further 0.5 percentage points in the next year. I'm looking now at a post on social media that I want to bring up by the DA federal leader, that's Helen Zille, who's posted saying the dreaded 1% VAT increase has been pushed through by Parliament. And then what the DA has done is to put together a graphic, basically, and we'll hopefully be able to pull it up for you, where they're basically saying that this has passed because ActionSA, the ANC, IFP, Rise and Zanzi, UDM, PAC, Al-Jamaa, Build One SA, ACDP, the Good Party, and the PA, according to the DA, have now voted in favor of the passing of the budget tonight in Cape Town.
And it's interesting because now one wonders, what does it mean for the Democratic Alliance? Because they had this as a red line going into this particular budget, and a lot of questions to say, what then are you doing? Especially when you listen to that leaked audio, you know, from earlier on, you get a sense that the Deputy President of the ANC President, you know, in that particular audio reportedly saying that they're working themselves outside of the Government of National Unity. Last week, you speak to the Democratic Alliance Friday, they say that the ANC told them, you can go. On Monday, they say it's possibly fruitful discussions. Now things seem to have turned.
Just last night, we spoke to the ANC spokesperson, Mahlengi Bengumutsiri, who was saying that talks were ongoing. And what's interesting is that even in the GNU, remember, when the budget stalled for the first time in February, we were told that it wasn't just the DA that had taken exception to the inclusion of a VAT increase. There were others too, but it seems that for the other political parties, the budget was not a hurdle too far. The DA had been accused, also of including things that went beyond the scope of the budget. So what's interesting now is, what does it mean for the GNU?
And I'm very interested to hear that. So I'll let you have that conversation with Abra then, so that we get a sense of how things then look like and what the DA has to say, and even the presidency.
And let's go to Cape Town now, bring in SABC News reporter Abra Barbia, who's stationed outside the Dome where that vote took place a short time ago. Abra, very tight vote, but it appears the ANC's lobbying has paid off and it's managed to get this budget across the line.
Mikili, good evening. I'm not going to get into analysis. I'm just going to go straight to the political parties. But first, I have Vincent Magwenyu of the presidency. My colleagues were talking about the leaked audio that we all heard earlier on today. I'm not going to get into that with you right now because we all saw what played out. What does this mean for the future of the GNU? Has the presidency said anything on that yet?
Well, the president has not said anything, but all we can say is that government will remain stable. Now that the budget has been passed, we can focus on driving the president's reform. We can focus on pursuing economic growth, and we can focus on delivering what the people of South Africa expect.
Cabinet reshuffles?
Can't comment on that right now. We're just relieved that the budget has been passed.
Okay, so I suppose we'll be hearing from you guys late tonight if if you do things like you normally do things. Vincent, thank you so much. Karabo Kakao of the DA. Ma'am, it was a tight one. You're not looking happy. What does this mean for the GNU? We heard the finance minister earlier on saying that if you vote against us, we can't expect to sit at the same table with us tomorrow.
Equally, the Democratic Alliance made it very clear that we cannot work with a budget that we do not endorse. And that is why we voted against this budget. I want to reiterate that this budget is a budget against the people of this country, against the people of this country who are unable to put food on the table for themselves and their families, who cannot afford to buy school shoes, who cannot afford to basically breathe altogether. And the kingmakers in today's decision was ActionSA. ActionSA sold South Africans to the highest bidder. They traded off the hopes and aspirations of South Africans who were depending on this parliament to be their vanguards for one round of fame. And that is something that will never go down well in the history books of this country altogether. And we know this, we know that they sold out the country because, Abra, Minister Godongwana told us today that this framework was passed as is. VAT is still not off the table. They are voting in favor of a hope that come Friday that maybe by God's grace we will be able to see a VAT increase off the table. Mind you, that conversation is about a VAT, is about taxation alone and not about the replacement of the framework as it stands right now as to where the balance that we are going to find against the budget is going to be altogether. But the Democratic Alliance today is very proud to be one of the political parties that led the chant against a VAT increase, led a chant against the destroying the lives of poor South Africans and a middle class that is struggling to make ends meet. Our fight as the Democratic Alliance remains to ensure that we have a budget that is not wasteful, that is free of corruption, that is free of irregular expenditure, as we have seen to be the case in the last 31 years. And thanks to ActionSA, the ANC is back to their gravy train altogether. Our fight as the Democratic Alliance has always been to ensure that our economy grows, because the people of this Republic of South Africa depend on that economy so that they can unlock job opportunities, so that we can alleviate poverty, so that we can bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in this country. Thanks to ActionSA, we will wake up tomorrow to a destroyed nation altogether, and the Democratic Alliance remains proud to have been voting against the madness that we saw today.
Thank you so much for your time. That was the DA's national spokesperson, obviously not very happy at all. Let me just see, I've got Mr. Athol Trollop. You overheard what your colleague in the DA just said, spitting fire, very angry with ActionSA tonight.
Yeah, sounds a bit hysterical actually, and I'm surprised, because what is really affecting South Africans is the fact that all this insecurity has affected the value of the rand, and that affects South Africans much, much more. We're very pleased that our recommendation to the ANC was that they must go and find additional revenue, and the best place to do that is through the South African Revenue Services. They showed that in the last fiscal year they raised 1.855 trillion rand, which is 8.8 billion rand more than they expected and 114 billion rand more than they did the year before. So they've said that there's 800 billion rand that they can find that has been declared, 400 and 400 undeclared. And we said to the finance minister, give them the money they need to go and get that money. He gave them 4 billion rand plus an additional 3 billion rand over the medium-term budget. So we're now saying that instead of delaying this process even further, like the DA and other parties wanted to do, they wanted to delay it and leave this country with the insecurity of not having a budget. We are now going to see what can be done to find the revenue to bridge the 28 billion rand deficit, and we believe they'll find that easily. And the ANC have made a commitment to us, and they've made a commitment to South Africa, and we're going to hold them to that commitment to find that money to balance the budget without charging VAT to poor South Africans and without allowing South Africans that pay personal income tax to succumb and to be a victim of income tax creep because of inflation, which is actually a stealth tax, which affects every single South African who earns a salary. So we're happy today that sense prevailed, that our recommendation in the Finance Committee has been assented to by Parliament. A lot was said yesterday about ActionSA being the sellout. We were one of 11 members. Now Parliament, out of 400 members, have voted in a majority to proceed with this fiscal framework and to find additional revenue to balance the budget.
Mr. Trollop, your colleagues are all waiting here as well. I just need you to explain something on the issue of the recommendations, binding, not binding, an amendment. I mean, all of this has been in discussion, and there seems to be confusion about whether the recommendations will fall by the wayside by the end of the week. Can you just please break it down for our viewers?
Abra, there's a lot of confusion because we've never been in this situation before in the post-democratic South Africa. This is the first time that this has happened, as the first time that this budget has been scrutinized like this. We will see whether the ANC stand to their commitments. They've made commitments that they will go and find that money. We believe that we will make submissions, in fact, to the Portfolio Committee and to Parliament where we believe that money can be found. We believe it can easily be found to carry on and prevent the implementation of this VAT hike. The Minister is committed to that, the ANC have committed to that, we'll hold them to it.
Thank you so much. I see Mr. Vuyuzungula of the ATM in front of me. What are your thoughts on what just happened in the National Assembly in South Africa? Is it going to be all doom and gloom after this, as some of the parties are predicting?
Look, no matter how much people can spin it, the reality is that VAT is going to be the order of the day because of the parties that voted for a VAT hike. If you were to listen even to the speech of the finance minister, he was justifying why the VAT hike is there. He was not talking about the VAT hike is off the table, they are going to find other alternatives. He was committing to South African citizens to say that is the reality and this is the reason why. So it boggles us as a party to say, why do we have other parties speaking about other commitments? Because if there were other commitments, the Minister of Finance would have spoken about those commitments. So it is a shame that majority of the parties that voted today voted for an increase in VAT, whereas there's other alternative like your wealth tax, mining royalties, because the South African economy or Treasury, the amount that was raised by VAT in 2022 was 16 times more than the amount that we receive from mining and petroleum royalties. We're a minerally rich country, but we've got a government or a Treasury that is lazy when it comes to thinking about means of raising income or revenue that is towards the rich, towards mineral resources. They want to further impoverish black people, poor black people, by these VAT hikes. We saw it in 2018. They said they'll reduce it. Even now, they are making another commitment, but we know it's not going to be the case. Yet, South African citizens are struggling with high cost of electricity, fuel prices, cost of living, food prices. But on top of that, this uncaring government wants to add VAT in the process. We are not in support of that as the ATM. That is why we proudly voted against this particular report.
Thank you for your time. Behind me, I have the IFP, Mr. Hlabisa. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Your party voted in favor of the report today.
Thank you very much. The IFP has been consistent when the proposed table budget was including 0.5% VAT. We supported the budget today because we are of the view this is the best way to go. If you consider the aspects of the budget, more allocation was given to infrastructure, which will create job opportunities. More money was given to health and education. That will create job opportunities, and the doctors and teachers and nurses will be employed, will be serving the poorest of the poor. More money went to SARS. SARS must collect more money so that within 1 year, the 0.5 VAT increase should be removed. We supported the budget because there was no fuel increase, because we knew if you increase the fuel, it triggers prices for food as well as transport. Again, this budget was supported because it will increase grants, will be beneficial to the poorest of the poor. Again, if you look at this budget, more people who will benefit are the poorest in terms of what the budget looks at. So now, we agreed at a cabinet level. After today, the president must call a special cabinet where we will look at how are we going to grow the economy in order to ensure that we leverage the burden that will be created by 0.5%, and also the increase of the items that will be zero rated in terms of VAT will be a cushion versus the 0.5 VAT increase.
Thank you for your time. I see Mr. Julius Malema of the EFF. Sorry. We just... Okay. There was lots of confusion since last night.
Yes.
I've been trying to make, to understand exactly, because there was conflicting information being put out there. In fact, your colleague Sinawo Tamba was following his tweets today, and he was explaining blow by blow what this actually means for the viewer, for the man on the street who doesn't understand the implications and why you voted against this budget. Can you please break it down for me?
Well, budget is governed by a money bill, and the Money Bill Act was not followed to the latter, to an extent that the Finance Committee had two roles to play: to adopt the fiscal framework and budget proposal, or to amend. and neither of the two happened. The 8.84 of the money bill dictates that you should be able to say, as a committee, we adopt the fiscal framework and budget proposal. That did not happen. Even if you go into the recordings of that meeting, it didn't transpire. Therefore, they did not meet the requirement. There is nothing in the Money Bills Act that suggests that you can make recommendations. Whatever recommendations that came with ActionSA is political maneuvering, is political thuggerism to create an impression that something is going to happen when nothing is going to happen. If he comes after 30 days and he says, I couldn't find that money, I'm continuing with VAT, what recourse do we have? We don't have any other recourse. We don't adopt a budget twice. It is done now. VAT is going to be increased, and the ANC allowed it. The ActionSA allowed it. The IFP allowed it. The poor of the poorest are going to suffer. And that's why, as the EFF, we oppose that which is going to put more burden on the poor of the poorest. So the other point is that we wanted to demonstrate what we have said since the constitution of the GNU, that there is nothing called the GNU. You have all seen it collapsing in front of the whole society today. We said this will not last for a year. Today, everybody saw what we have been speaking about. So we are happy that we're able to demonstrate in action that there is nothing common about so-called government of national unity.
Thank you for your time, sir. Let me just peep to see who else is around me. I have the ANC chief with me. Sir, thank you so much for your time. I'll be with you now, Minister.
Thank you.
It's a bit of a scrum here, so please just bear with us. We were hoping to speak to you last night already. I suppose lots has been going on behind the scenes. What does this mean in terms of governance? What does this mean in terms of how Parliament's going to be continuing with its work politically in terms of relations between parties?
Well, I think the first and the obvious meaning that we've got to articulate that the budget, the fiscal framework has been passed, and therefore that is setting us on the path to ensure that government begins to make the decisive interventions to address the plights of our people. We've got doctors who are unemployed in this country. We need money for that to happen. We've got many health workers who have not been replaced over the past few years. Our hospitals are not in good condition, some of them without medication or enough medication. Must respond to that. Our schools, the implementation of the Bella Act has to be fasting, and this budget is proposing the direction to address that issue. And as you know, this budget is beginning to lay the foundation towards the implementation of the very important NHI, which must help us to deal with the disparities that exist between the private and the health facilities in our country. So we're very happy as the ANC. We want to congratulate the parties that have remained steadfastly loyal to the position we discussed and adopted with them. That let's pass the fiscal framework, let's then have an opportunity beyond the framework having been passed and discuss many and a lot of concerns that they've raised and work together to see to it that we can find a solution to the problem.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. Let me just pop over to Minister De Lille, leader of the Good Party. Can you just step in here? Thank you so much. Minister, what does this mean for the GNU? I mean, there's so much hope has been placed in the GNU, the partnership. I think it's been the last 9 months that the parties have been operating like this. And I remember at the first budget that didn't happen, John Steenhuisen still said, no, just because we have one disagreement doesn't mean the GNU is going to fall apart. I know you can't speak on behalf of the GNU, but just based on what happened today, you know, where does South Africa move to from here?
You know, I always think is that it's not fair to put all the pressure on National Treasury for economic growth and job creation. Every minister, you get allocated the budget, and you must come with a plan to contribute to with economic growth and job creation. What I can't see now is that those ministers that voted against the budget that was allocated by them by the Minister of Finance, what is going to happen. But for me, what illustrates today that the GNU is not dependent on just one party. There's no one that holds the balance of power, that we were able to get the budget through today without one of our partners. And I've always appealed that we need to put the country first. Even this morning, there were attempts to bring the DA in, but the DA stuck to their demands, which was not related to the budget at all. And so we will just have to see. It's up to the president. It's his prerogative who he wants to keep and what he will do.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Lil. There's still quite a few parties we need to get through, but let me just speak with Matthew Parks of Cosatu, and then I'll come to the UDM as well. Mr. Parks, thank you for your time. Earlier on when we spoke, you said that you took issue with the 30 days. That's part of the recommendation. You said it's not in fact 30 days. Can you please, I'm just trying to help our viewers understand exactly what's happening and how the processes will unfold.
Okay, it looks so slightly confusing, to put it politely. I think government wanted to pass the budget today to avoid government heading to unfunded territory, which would have made it difficult to do new expenditure and so on. So the budget's been passed. The finance committees yesterday agreed unanimously that there should not be a VAT hike, that personal income tax brackets should be adjusted for inflation. So they've given Treasury 30 days to come back to report to them on alternatives. 30 days is too long because on the 1st of May, if the budget is not amended, then the tax hikes will come into effect. So basically within the next week or so, Treasury needs to go back to the finance committees and say, here's alternatives to a VAT hike or to the PIT non-adjustment. We think there are very simple options to do so, which can be done, but you need to do so very quickly. 30 days is far too long. So it is messy, to put it politely. It would have been better for Parliament to have made these adjustments before adopting the budget, but it can be done, although it's under very, very severe time constraints, and it is very, very complicated and very messy. But look, the ANC has given the commitment that they are going to adjust the budget in terms of the VAT hike. We hope they'll keep that agreement. We hope Treasury will provide the alternatives, and there are very simple alternatives we have made as Cosatu to the Finance Committee.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Kwankwa of the UDM, can you please just step into the frame? Thank you so much for your time. How are you, sir?
Good, thanks.
I'm good, thank you very much, sir. Just give me your take on what happened in the House this evening.
Well, what happened in the House is that we managed to pass the Fiscal Framework Report, which came from the Standing Committee on Finance. And it was another way of trying to take South Africa forward in terms of dealing with the budget issue, because we felt like delaying it unnecessary is that it puts everything on hold. We could not allow a situation where the country is being held to ransom by a few political parties whose demands could actually be met with the process that we are undertaking, where there are going to be further deliberations. I asked the question on behalf of my party. It's easy for people to make noise and say, don't increase VAT. Of course, even our party doesn't want us to increase VAT, but what are the alternatives? Don't increase corporate income tax. You must not engage in bracket creep. Don't increase indirect taxes. And yes, there's a revenue shortfall in the country. The economy is not going to grow tomorrow or next month or next week for us to be able to plug the revenue shortfall. So some tough decisions have to be made at some point. And that's the kind of discussion we should be having with South Africans and be frank with them about it. Yes, we can lament about the wasteful expenditure. We hate it with passion. We have fought against corruption. But now we find ourselves in a situation where we need to balance our books. So some tough choices have to be made. But in the process of making those tough choices, we need to improve accountability measures insofar as making sure that the GNU government is accountable to Parliament, to South Africans in general. And we should make sure that those who are found guilty in the state capture process and whatnot should be brought to book, and some resources should be recovered back to the taxpayer so that we can be able to use that money for the social wage. Otherwise, we're not going to sit here and twiddle our thumbs and fight over issues that we can deal with when we sit in the portfolio committee itself. But what Parliament should do is to take charge of that process, where SARS is going to provide a number of scenarios to say these are the different options. But it's proper modeling. It's not vague or empty political statements. It must be based on empirical evidence. Otherwise, it's not economics. It's engaging in politics then.
Thank you. Sorry, I have my producers talking in my ears as well. Thank you so much for your time. Now, Mr. Musi Maimane of Bosa. So the one thing we all know is that everybody is against the VAT hike. But we're not all on the same page tonight.
Well, I think what's important to note is, at a starting point, a South Africa without a budget is a South Africa that slides deeper into the direction of a banana republic. Your greatest dilemma is that even if you didn't raise VAT, yesterday's reaction when there were delays, court actions and all of that, we're already in quantums of billions, indicating that the longer you delay the budget, the more you exacerbate the hole. So we needed to pass a budget today. The second thing that we needed to do was that now we've got to engage on how we amend it. Because the framework is in place, now we can amend it. As I've raised today, I've proposed that other revenue raising mechanisms, of which one of them is declaring online gambling sin tax, so that you can accrue 80 billion rands. That will shut out the VAT issue. And then also look at the expenditure framework about how we change those, so that ultimately you focus on growth enhancing things. So today was about, let us ensure that we can begin the process legislatively so that we can change the things going forward. That's the work that we've got to do, and our committee, as the Appropriations Committee, will now get hard at work to begin to adjust the expenditure framework.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Maimane. I'm not sure if I'm cutting into our ad break time right now, but I'm going to try my luck because I have the Finance Minister with me. Sir, you're the one at the center of all this drama today. How do you feel about coming out of the House? I mean, you said this evening, if our GNU partners do not vote with us, we can't be expected to sit with them at the table tomorrow.
I said it in the House?
Yes.
Yes, I drew a line.
Yes.
And that line was that there's no basis for people not to vote for a budget and then go to the cabinet and think that they're going to implement the same budget. But that decision does not lie with me, it lies with the ANC, but I would find it difficult for the ANC to accept such a behavior.
I'm sorry, I've got people speaking in my ear as well, sir. So I'm just trying to understand, was there no meeting halfway? Because I keep coming back to what
Let me just say to you, after the postponement of the budget on the 19th, we had a special cabinet. In that special cabinet, the president then set up a committee led by the deputy president, which composed of ministers of the day and the ANC. We generated 5 proposals in that meeting. Among those 5 proposals, it was the DA that proposed no tax relief, in other words, the bracket creep. It was the DA. And then they included an increase in fuel tax, they included a medical increases, and so on and so on. Now, when we pressed, there was another, that was option 1. There was another option 5. We included 5,59,5 next year. We combined these 2 proposals. So the DA has been part of the process right through. The DA, as we stand, they've said they're going to accept the 5% on condition that the ANC make concession on things which have got nothing to do with the budget. They've been abusive in the whole process.
Okay, I hear you on that. Thank you for your time. I'm not sure who's next in line. Okay, I have MK moving towards me. You can come step into frame. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Everything started off really rocky. I mean, some parties were even trying to, because I mean, you guys were also trying to. Was it you guys or the EFF who wanted the debate to be delayed today? In fact, yes, both of you, sir. You didn't get what you wanted. There was a clear agenda today going forward.
Yeah, we did not get what we wanted, but we believe that the process today was flawed because what brought us here is actually a deception, where they managed to get the ActionSA to say that this impose a condition that defers the decision for 30 days. In terms of the Money Bills Amendment Act, there is no such thing. What ought to have happened is we either accept or amend. We have tried to put forward certain amendments that we wanted to see in order for us not to be able to raise VAT, because at the end of the day, the key issue for us is that we don't want a budget where the poorest of the poor are the ones who are negatively affected, because VAT is very regressive. Those who are poor in terms of the share of this VAT, they actually get affected much more than rich people. So for us, we felt that we needed to have dealt with this thing in a particular way. It was, they ran roughshod to push it forward, but we will look at what types of redress is available to us. We can also go to the courts to be able to deal with this issue, because we have to fight for the poor. We have to make sure that poor people are not negatively affected by the ANC not wanting to think properly about how best to deal with the balance between austerity measures and economic growth.
Thank you so much for your time. Steve Swart of the ACDP. We've just heard the MKP speaking about taking this to the courts. What is your stance on this?
Well, we did point out in our speech that we believe there were some legal irregularities with the way the whole process was done, particularly yesterday's meeting with the committee, and that it didn't comply with the particular legislation. However, that having been said, we are disappointed with the vote at the end of the day today, and the fact that Parliament didn't use its powers that we have. The population of South Africa have rejected this VAT increase, and we could have insisted that it was removed. But it went through, and we also pointed out that the challenge we have as the ACDP is that the economic growth projections are high at 1.9%, not high enough, but how realistic is that, given that it was only 0.6% last year? We also said that SARS could collect 80 billion rand additionally, of even 10% of what is owed to them, and that we should cut government expenditure, unnecessary expenditure, and that would make the VAT increase unnecessary, given the fact that yesterday SARS announced that they collected an 8.8 billion rand extra. So we do not believe that the VAT increase was fully justified.
Thank you for your time, sir. Mr. Zibi of Dias Mzansi. Sir, I'm hearing a lot. Your colleague, Mr. Swart, just spoke about SARS being able to collect. I'm hearing quite a bit of that today. What's your take on how the vote went this evening and the implications of the tax, the VAT increase that's still there in the vote?
So, look, I think this is what we must expect now, because no party has a majority. And I know South Africans are kind of still shocked at the idea of the budget not sailing through and half the MPs sleepwalking their way through the process. Budgets are supposed to be negotiated. They're supposed to be fiercely negotiated. Our system was built with a tension between Parliament and the executive in mind. This is what is supposed to happen with budgets. They're supposed to be hotly contested. So we must not get stressed that the finance minister cannot get the budget that he or she wants because their party does not have the majority. So that is the first thing. We are in a new normal. For the next 5 years, it's important that people understand that this is likely to happen year in, year out. So that is the first thing. The second thing, the amount of money that is in question here is 31.5 billion rand. 13 billion rand of that, or 13.5 billion, is a 0.5% VAT increase, and 19 billion rand was going to be taken from the salaries of workers, of artisans, of policemen, of nurses, of doctors, teachers, and so on. Nobody cares about that for some reason, because the Democratic Alliance has framed the debate to only be about VAT, so they can negotiate other political victories that they want. These two issues are now back on the table, because we must look at these numbers again and find ways over the next 30 days in which we can give that 19 billion rand back to working families who are struggling to afford to pay school fees and so on, and we can also do away with a 0.5% VAT increase. But I also want to say again, there is going to be no budget with easy options. We are going to have to cut somewhere. We are going to have to sell something. The important thing is that whatever decisions are taken, we protect the most vulnerable at the end of the day.
Mr. Zibi, thank you so much for your time. I think that's all I have time for right now. It was a scrum. We had as many parties here as we possibly could have. I'm not sure if any of them are still hanging it down, but for now I'm going to cross back to the studio.
Abra, thank you very much for that. Abra Barbia getting all the political reaction just outside the Dome, where members of parliament in the last hour or so voted by a very slim margin, it must be said, to adopt the budget tabled by the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana last month. How the vote then, how the cookie crumbled. It was 194 who voted in favour of the budget's adoption, while 182 were against, with no abstentions. A lot of this is centred around what the DA has been saying. Well, breaking news to bring you on that score: the Democratic Alliance confirming in a statement that's just been released that they will be approaching the High Court in the Western Cape. They say the plan is to challenge Parliament's passing of the 2025-2026 national budget. The DA then says it is unthinkable that ActionSA has handed, they say, the value-added tax increase to the ANC on a platter. They then say it is both unlawful and unconstitutional, according to the DA, how Parliament has processed the budget.